Oh shit, we're back in the best game mode ever that you will never get to experience as a pathetic realistic battles player. We're playing EC, literally the greatest game mode ever devised, and oh my god, you guys are missing out on so much fun if you don't have Enduring Confrontation in your game mode. You're in that pathetic loser competitive game mode where people only get a spawn once, and oh my god, this is going to be so much better with EC. Like, you guys are actually coping. Anyways, that's all sarcasm. I'm here to actually talk about Enduring Confrontation, specifically the realistic battles version of Enduring Confrontation, because there's a lot of misconceptions on what that would probably mean for the game, because a lot of people don't understand how Enduring Confrontation works or how it would work within the context of realistic battles. There's this idealized sentiment that EC, just by its very nature, is less competitive, is less prone to some of the problems that people have with the current RB mode. Like, more often than not, when people are talking about Enduring Confrontation, they imagine this game mode where it's more peaceful, it's more spread out, it's more methodical, and that is true to an extent. But the extent that this happens to be true is more or less limited to games that are not completely full, like games that are half to 1/4 of the way full. Like, you get a more quote unquote intimate experience in an environment where you don't have markers and there's only maybe 4 players on the enemy team, and maybe only one of them is actually focused on player versus player action. What effectively happens is, in small games, it's really easy for Enduring Confrontation to turn into effectively a player versus environment mode. And the only way that this PvE gameplay persists is as long as the lobby remains small, and as long as there's mutual consent amongst basically the whole entire team. As soon as you get PvP players that join your EC lobby, things get a lot sweatier a lot quicker. And all of the same issues that you have in AirRB, where it feels claustrophobic, those still happen in your larger EC games, especially your top tier ones, where the maps are, they're large, but they're probably not large enough to host 16 versus 16 players. Oftentimes what happens in your top tier lobbies is, once they get full, you're getting radar locked the second you leave your airfield. And usually what happens with top tier games is, one side, the side that gets better at PvP, eventually that snowballs because the costs are so high that really sticking around in a game where you're going just even just isn't worth it. So you end up with a lot of EC lobbies that are partially full, or they end up in a situation where it's 3 players on one team versus 9 players on the other, just farming them until they leave. This isn't even the logical conclusion of top tier gameplay. This is just the natural progression of how lobbies end up working with the way the reward system is currently structured. There is absolutely no reason to stick around in a game where you are doing poorly in it. And the fact that you're doing poorly causes you to leave, which makes your team even less competitive, which feeds the cycle of the next guy's going to leave, the next guy's going to leave, and then it turns into a stop. It is basically the same thing as AirRB, but in slow motion. These small objective-based games where the objectives actually mean something, they don't exist, because Enduring Confrontation, at the end of the day, is a game mode that is developed by Gaijin, and it has never been completely finished. It has tons and tons of flaws, and a lot of those flaws are very similar to what exists in AirRB, because the underlying artificial intelligence program is basically the same. You end up with a whole host of really interesting and weird situations. Currently in Enduring Confrontation, there's a bug where missiles just stop working after an hour of game time. They just start flying straight. On top of that, you have objectives and situations that are just nonsensical. Most of the objectives are essentially what amounts to a fetch quest. It's like playing Grand Theft Auto on free mode. Like, it's fun to explore. Like, don't get me wrong, I think EC is probably the right game mode for Sim because, actually making the plane work is like the thing that you do, and because using the airplanes in Sim is at least entertaining enough in and of its own right. Um, the underlying game mode just doesn't have to be good, but in a game mode where all the planes kind of fly themselves because of the instructor and the way that things work, there is less to learn in the plane control aspect. So, like, the game mode that it is serving has to make sense. And EC currently as a game mode just doesn't make sense. The way the objectives feed into each other, they don't. They're just there to do. It's like doing an errand. Eventually doing all of these errands may or may not just stack into a ticket lead, or the map might just be scripted where you didn't really overcome anything, and yeah, cool, you got points, but it didn't really matter. It didn't affect anything. Really, the only objectives that can have an effect are bombing airfield runways so that people can't respawn, because you can employ a really toxic strategy if you really wanted to, where you bomb everyone's airfield, and then now we're just playing air RB, but now one side can respawn and the other side can't. Or you can even make it more toxic, where you bomb everyone's airfield except for one, and then they have to respawn from that airfield and you just consolidate your whole entire team there. Which, that is something that would be a logical conclusion, and is a logical conclusion to literally any game that has fixed respawn locations. I don't care what it is. It can be literally any first-person shooter game from the early 2000s with fixed respawn locations. Was basically team deathmatch. You kill each other, you push the enemy team back to their spawn, and then you camp the shit out of them as they spawn. That is more or less what ground RB turns into as well. So, EC in RB context could very well just turn into spawn camp the shit out of the other guy. Honestly, if you look at old videos, I think Defin has an old video, that's more or less what he did with a 109 F4 to get like 20 kills in the game. Just like, enemy gets pushed back to predictable respawn location, and he can just sit above them and farm them as they leave their airfield. Alternatively, if AA is really good, they can just circle their airfield, and now we're in a 30-minute stalemate, which I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I have actually done this in Sim EC. I have played against players who will spend literally 30 minutes of the game running from one airfield to the other until you leave them alone, because they can't do anything else. You can just kind of cancel them out. Now, is that good gameplay? I kind of don't think so. And that really isn't even like the only way you can just ruin the way the game mode would probably be implemented, because the way that it'd be implemented is they're gonna take SBEC, put RB markers in it, RB controls, there you go, that's what you get. Also, here's the same reward structure. There are so many ways to game the EC system to make it terrible. Just like you have 4-person squads in Air RB that just kind of waffle stomp everyone, but yeah, you're only there for 10 minutes, so like, it's painful, it kind of sucks, but at least it's over in 10 minutes. In EC, you can pick the room that you want to go to. You can look at the player list, and if you really just want to like fuck with one guy, you can take you and 15 of your best friends and basically insert them into their room. It means that all of the really avid PvE players could really easily be chased around by PvP players looking for free kills. Overall, don't think that's a really good thing, at least from the perspective of RBEC being the good, fun, enjoyable game mode that people imagine it to be. Speaking of things that people imagine that rewards in Enduring Confrontation would be similar to what you experience in Air RB. That is simply not true. And the reason that it is not true is because within the Sim community, EC was abused in order to make it into a PvE mode, in order to basically generate free money with no risk, that Gaijin has gradually nerfed it over the years into absolute fucking oblivion. they have like finally gotten around to making it so that playing top tier is not completely insufferable, but by and large, your game time spent versus rewards gained in EC is significantly less because of the average being too high, because of people gaming the old system in order to maximize the rewards. Which, if you look at the background footage that I posted here, because it's literally just background footage, just 84 gameplay, that's exactly what's happening here in the context of the really stupid grinding build event. They finally made it so that events are doable in Sim again, and the team that I am facing has literally one person in a fighter, and then everyone else is in bombers, because they're literally trying to min-max the amount of time they play the game versus the rewards they get. Like, Ada Wolf is good at Sim EC. Like, he's probably one of the best players I've fought, which, fuck him, he's a cunt, but, like, I'll recognize skill, because, like, it's there. But even with his 10,000 kills in a fucking P51 and all of the effort he spent in the game, like, he can't counteract the fact that his team is saddled with basically dead weight. And he's saddled with this dead weight for an hour and a half straight, and, like, yeah, I know, I'm hating on bomber players, but in the context of even this game mode, they are dead weight. The objectives that they bombed had no effect on the outcome of the game. And that's, like, one of the major issues with EC, is, like, none of the objectives actually feed into each other. It's not like a Battlefield 4 Frontline or whatever the advanced game mode is, where, like, you take a thing and you're like, oh shit, we actually did a thing, and or you're like, oh shit, they're taking our fucking bullshit, we need to stop them. That doesn't really exist within the context of EC. The only time that it actually exists is when tickets are, like, literally just down to the wire. Then your 1 to 2 objectives that you can do might offset some things, but more often than not, your objectives have kind of, like, auto-completed themselves. The bombers that you're supposed to escort ended up flying directly over the enemy airfield, and they just get shot down. Or you're on a map where you get a bunch of destroy the convoy objectives, but you realistically can't, because convoy AA is, like, completely busted and just nukes you, like, right away. Or you end up in a plane where you have to go chase down bombers in it. You gotta go, like, okay, you're gonna go destroy the bombers. You're like, oh, cool. I'm in an ME-262. Oh, the bombers are Yak 38s flying at 1100 kph at 5,000 meters. I'm not catching those under any circumstances. It's just not going to happen. Or you end up with situations where you have to go seize an air objective. That air objective is directly over the enemy airfield. Like, the extent that Enduring Confrontation has been developed is strictly limited to being a sandbox that simulator battles players can kind of wander around in and get a general sense of satisfaction of having done something. But as, like, a cohesive game mode, it is not there, and it is probably not going to get there anytime soon. Excellent. Anyways, that's the video. If you like what I do, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. If you don't, I don't know, send me death threats. It'll be funny.